I'd like to call this Thursday, July 6, 2023 Committee of the Whole Meeting Administration to order. I'm sorry, Aaron, were we good? All right, thank you, sir. All right, we will have roll call. Rod Riley is here. Ryan Curry.
Here.
Ryan Schneider. Here. Dave Wiltsey.
Here.
Ray Larson.
Here.
Brent Mueller.
Here.
Tom Wahlberg. Here. Alyssa Patterson.
Here.
Dana Logston.
Here. Here.
Barry Branson.
Here.
Carl Johnson. Not here right now. Marion Thornberry.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Have any minutes to approve, dude? Top here. Okay, we don't have any minutes. Let's go to 5.1. That's public comment. I've got quite a few here this evening.
Point of order.
I'm sorry.
Point of
Oh,
order.
I'm sorry. You're right. My bad.
4.1.
4.1, approval of the agenda. Have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Schneider. Any discussion? Mr. Wiltsey.
I would like to move 9.16 up to the first matter we consider tonight, and 9.17 up to the second matter we consider tonight.
This would be under new business, sir?
Whatever's the earliest we can get it.
Yep.
Actually, in front of monthly presentations, if we could.
All right, we have a motion to move 9.16 and 9.17 to the quarter, the monthly present, or I'm sorry, let's do the monthly presentations. Is there any discussion on that? All right, motion to approve the amendment by Mr. Wiltsey. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion carries. Let the record reflect that at 6:03, Mr. Carl Johnson has joined us in the meeting. Welcome, sir. All right, then back to the original motion then on the agenda. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion carries. All right then, let's go to 9.16. Sorry, Mr. Larson, take the meeting, please, sir.
Thank you. Should we do comment?
Okay, public comment. I'm going to read them off here. Everybody gets 3 minutes. Please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record, and I will start the timer after you begin. All right? We'll begin with Mr. Carl Jarvik. Jarvik, I'm sorry, Corey. Got the last name right.
My name is Corey Javrick. My wife and Christine and I live on the south side of the proposed bed and breakfast special use permit. We are in opposition of special use because does not meet the requirements of the special use permit. Finding of the facts, had the proposed structure or use will not have substantial adverse effects upon the adjacent properties, character of the neighborhood, traffic, etc. The potential, and then F, the potential public benefits of the special use outweigh any potential adverse effects of the special use. You can look no further than our neighbors, Love Park. They just amended some of their definition to include, but not limited to, vacation rentals and or bed and breakfast to their hotel, motel, inn, and auto courts in their Code of Ordinances, section 102-9 definitions, which falls under a retail type of setting. It doesn't mean that they can't have it in our R1 setting at all. It just means that it has to be, the R1 also has to be in a commercial type setting. I actually spoke with the zoning officer today, Andrew Quintanilla, and he had said in his statement that these establishments have over the years become problematic in residential areas. Residents have voiced complaints about people who are renting these homes for parties. Complaints also include congestion to neighborhoods, late night music, and calls to local authorities. He said we took in enough complaints to decide that we would address issues using our municipal zoning code to preserve our residential neighborhoods. And that's why, in one example, that those two do not meet the needs of the permit. the intent of the permit. And also our friends down the road can also speak to their experience as well, which also support those facts as well. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you, sir. Next up, Megan Martin. Megan, if you would approach the podium, please give us your full name and address for the record, and I'll start the timer after you begin.
Good evening. I'm Megan Martin. My address is 9033 Smokethorn Trail in Belvedere. I also would like to speak in opposition to this proposal for the bed and breakfast. We came off of, unfortunately, the last summer and the last year or so for us in our neighborhood. We had a short-term rental property around the block from us. And as a mother of 3 small children, there were a number of parties, and there isn't a front desk or a person to be sort of keeping tabs on it who's immediately at the premises when this is going on. And it's very concerning from a safety standpoint, from a noise standpoint. There were fights, there were multiple times we had to call the police, and just kind of seems like a slippery slope situation. I'm sure that there were times that the rentals were not, rowdy and there wasn't an issue, but there were a great number of times when it was a safety concern for us neighbors, and it's not something that I would like to see going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Craig Mertens. If you would pronounce your name for me correctly, sir. I'm sorry, when you reach the podium, your full name and address and minutes, sir. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Craig Menser, 639 Highfield Road. I was here at the last meeting that was when this was being discussed. And at that point in time, numerous times, people who had gotten up to speak, mostly opposed to it, had asked the persons who were wanting to run this bed and breakfast, what was going to be the situation. Part of what's in the rules is that someone has to be on site, and it can either be someone who's hired by them or themselves that could be there. And each time we were assured that they were going to be the ones that were there. Then I was talking with a woman after the meeting, and I asked her, I said, what is the difference between having a bed and breakfast and actually having the situation where it's a short-term rental? And the first thing out of her mouth was that it was the fact that short-term rental, you don't have to be there. Now that goes directly against what everything she had said during the meeting. Another comment that she had made was that she was going to help her son pick out the furniture and do the decorating, but she didn't want to be making breakfast. Well, I'm sorry, but every time I've stayed in a bed and breakfast, that's one of the person's things that they do. It's part of having that type of a business. They enjoy having people in and doing that kind of thing. I guess I just feel that they were kind of disingenuous with what they were trying to say. And I just feel that it's not a good situation for Boone County to be having this type of situation because of the same problems with what Megan Martin was just talking about. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I have Jordan Martin. Name and full address for the record, please, sir, and go ahead and begin after that.
Good evening. My name is Jordan Martin. I live on 9033 Smokethorn Trail in Belvedere, Illinois. Again, I'm here to voice opposition to the special use permit for the bed and breakfast zoning. And the reason is, I guess I'll start with inch versus a mile. If you notice also on the minutes, what they were supposed to have covered in the last CBA meeting, I believe the son of the people asking for this bed and breakfast special use permit are also asking for a short-term rental text amendment. So to me, it's kind of an inch versus a mile thing. And don't take this the wrong way. I don't think Belvedere is a destination city like, let's say, Galena, where it makes sense to have a lot of these bed and breakfasts. And that's not me saying anything bad about Belvedere. I consciously choose to live here because it's a quiet neighborhood setting. And if I wanted to live amongst a bunch of transients, I would get an apartment in downtown Rockford and raise my children amongst transients, not my neighbors who live in the neighborhood. Additionally, from what I read, they're asking for, I believe it is up to 16 people staying at this home. And from that perspective, what's the septic situation, but also what type of a bed and breakfast typically accommodates 16 people? I mean, that doesn't seem like it has some intimate, homey neighborhood feel at that point. Additionally, I think really what it is too is it's an attempt to monetize a residential property and, I don't know, sidestep building to commercial codes and doing all that at the expense of local hotels. I don't think anybody around Belvedere ever has an issue finding a hotel. So is this really necessary? Or is it just somebody's attempt at getting into an industry at a lower cost rate because they don't have all the various regulations associated with actually starting a hotel? And this is great. We've had to deal, as my wife mentioned, with short-term rentals that were illegal in our neighborhood where somebody simply bought a house and began operating at an Airbnb and VRBO. And immediately it was cars parked in the lawn, cars parked all along the loud music. Neighbors would call the cops. Then you drive by and your kids get to see lewd hand gestures because they realize the neighborhoods is calling the cop on them or the cops on them. And it's just not really what we signed up for when we bought a home and began paying property taxes in Boone County, that kind of stuff. And that's where it's headed.
Good.
That's about it. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, I have Mr. Steve Hindy. Steve, your name and address for the record. Yeah.
Good evening, Steve Hindy, president and founder of Shark, 43W799 Oakleaf Drive in Elburn. Shark's first rodeo investigation was the Wakanda Rodeo in 1993. We've investigated rodeos throughout the U.S. and into Canada, and the vast majority have been American style. What's the difference between American style versus Mexican style rodeos? American rodeos use an animal once, or maybe twice if there's a temporary shortage. In a Mexican rodeo, animals are used over and over, a dozen, 15. We've seen steers run as many as 20 times in a single performance. This overworking contributes to an injury rate far higher than American rodeos. American rodeos ban large electric prods that are often used, that are constantly used incessantly in Mexican rodeos. I have never seen a contestant at an American rodeo beat a horse or any animal. Horse beatings at Mexican rodeos are almost a competition to see who is the most brutal. Perhaps most disturbing is the absence of veterinary care, which is a violation of state law and basic human decency. Anyone who has suffered a broken limb knows that that's a challenge with the best of care. Now imagine that there's no care at all. And what's it like to be degloved? The word is actually very descriptive. Imagine a cut through the epidermis and then the dermis and the subcutaneous tissues underneath, and then give your hand a good yank. That's what happens with these steers. Unlike American rodeos, contestants use sharpened spurs that start a cut in the tail. Then a hard yank finishes the ripping and degloving process. Can you even imagine such suffering? It's been claimed that for 25 years these events have gone on with no problems, but that's not true. For the horses mercilessly beaten and the steers with broken legs, broken backs, degloved tails, and broken skulls, there were lots of problems. But they couldn't make a call for help, and the people who were supposed to protect them weren't around. The board members and citizens who are fighting to stop this gross cruelty are also trying to protect the image and culture of Boone County. And those include Hispanics who are afraid to speak out. The people putting these events on are largely Hispanic, but they don't represent all Hispanics any more than a convention of Ku Klux Klan members represents all white people, or an Al-Qaeda cell represents Middle Easterners. I ask that you look into your heart and put yourself into the place of the voiceless. We are able to reason, and we're supposed to have a moral rudder. Let that rudder guide you now. For the sake of these victims and for the long-term good of Boone County, please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, I have Dara Mogenis. Dara? Your name and address for the record, and begin.
Good evening, Dara Mogenis, 10861. Garden Prairie, Spring Road, Garden Prairie. Good evening. I really didn't write up a whole 3-minute speech like I normally do tonight. Most of you have hopefully opened and read my emails. I think it's pretty clear where our heart was after we found out that spending so much time and effort putting in a safety plan for the animals, as Steve had just said, hoping that we would have a plan put in place and it would be signed by a licensed veterinarian, and it would be then put in the application, and we would have something. They would have Band-Aids, they would have something for the steers if they were to get injured. Unfortunately, there was nothing on that application. And I want all of you to understand what you, and I'm sure you do, but what you voted for. An animal safety plan was supposed to be reviewed by a licensed veterinarian. The plan for the animals was supposed to be then signed by that veterinarian and submitted, which was what we thought, with their application. The only thing I can find is the word submitted is not there. This is under required, special use requirements. Everything else is required under there. Sanitation, security, garbage, but not for the animals. It just doesn't make sense. So we definitely need ad hoc committee. We need to sit down and go through this to make sure what we put in place, what we've been working for and with for the past year and almost a half now, that it sticks and that it helps not only the residents to endure the music of the show, that also helps protect the animals so that we don't have to have, as they said, people coming out on a weekend monitoring what is going on, because it's not happening. We do not have anybody coming out and monitoring what's happening. Also, wearing the bibs, participant identification. From what I have gathered, there was no participation bib wearing at the last rodeo, which should have been. And I don't know, I wasn't there. I know some other people were, but again, things we put in the ordinance, it didn't happen because we don't have anybody going out. And I also have to say, for the bed and breakfast listening to this, I don't support it. We do not have people that work on weekends. Staff does not work on weekends to take care of the animals or us residents. And for them, I would be against it 100%. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Terry Rossi. Terry, approach the podium, your full name and address for the record, please.
Terry Rossi, 5053 Shattuck Road, Belvedere. Good evening. You all look well. I wanted to give you an update that it looks like my neighbor across the street has moved. Someone else is living there, and my neighborhood is peaceful once again. And when I first came here, I came as a noise issue. And day one, a former board member said that it turned it into a race issue, and that took me aback. I was being naive, I suppose. But as the summer's gone on and my life is back to normal again somewhat, I'm still here because now I know what's happening. You know, it started out as noise and crowd safety, traffic, lots of drinking. Then we found out the animal issue. 20 years ago, we didn't have the sharks to look into things like this. And I'm very thankful for the sharks to find out what's really happening behind the scenes, because I did go to a rodeo personally and I could not see what was behind the wall. And then once I saw all the videos, and you know, it was just so disturbing. It's such a relief to have them gone, but I can't stop now because I know it still continues. So I've been thinking, if we have some ad hoc meetings, I would like to have some discussions with the other side, because when they talk about celebrating heritage, so now I'm thinking, okay, is there a discrepancy here between cultures, and that one culture thinks it's okay to go ahead and injure certain animals because of the animals they are? I don't know. Is that the difference in the heritage? I'm not sure. And I'd also would like to, just really thank all of you for considering all of this. This is a lot of stuff. And I want to thank the Sharks for bringing it all to light and helping me do that. And I look forward to having a discussion with the other side so I can find out. One man stood up here and said, they're worthless animals. They're $300 or $400. And I thought, okay, is this the difference we mean in heritage? I don't know. So I would like to find out. And I look forward to doing that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I think I got one more here. Darren Burke. Darren, if you could approach the podium, your full name and address.
Yes, thank you. I don't have anything. I'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant for this special use.
Oh, all right. Very good, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, anybody else for public comment? All right. Mr. Larson, the meeting is yours.
Chairman Riley. I need a motion to approve special use permit 13-2023. Hold on a second here. 115XX Coon Trail Road dwelling unit in exchange for a lot of record special use.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Ms. Roberts?
Yes, this is a special use request for a single-family dwelling unit in exchange for a lot of record in the A1 zoning district. The applicant, Daniel Sass, is in attendance. Of Woodstock is seeking the special use pursuant to section 4.15 second dwelling unit of lot of record exchange. The proposed property is heavily wooded. It's approximately 20 acres in size and is part of a larger 70-acre tract. The applicant is wishing to build a home on the wooded property with a lot of record, must be located in the ag preservation area and lawful existence prior to May 10th, 1978. Property in exchange for the dwelling area is adjacent the 70-acre tract. It's a 40-acre parcel, which is a lot of record. The Boone County Regional Planning Commission found the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommended approval 4-0. The Zoning Board of Appeals found the proposal meets the requirements of the zoning code and accepted the findings of facts as presented and voted also 4-0 in favor of the application. Staff had received requests for comments from the associated departments and agencies. There were no objections. There were some comments with regards to the fire protection district that recommended conditions as part of the special use, basically applying to the driveway access, length, construction, and emergency identification as part of the special use approval. The findings of fact are as shown, and Boone County Department concerns are reflected in the recommended conditions of approval. Staff recommends that the special use within the A1 Agriculture Preservation District be granted in exchange for a lot of record with the following conditions 1-3. Do you want me to read each one of them?
Yeah, you can.
Sure, okay. Condition 1, review and approve the driveway ingress, egress length, width, construction, and emergency identification by applicable agencies, including but not limited to Fire Protection District 4. Condition number 2, the 40-acre parcel identified as the PIN 0213-200-005, which is considered a lot of record, must be abandoned and recorded as such with the Boone County Clerk's Recorder's Office prior to building permit issuance. And finally, compliance with all applicable local, state, federal regulations and all other applicable codes and purposes.
Discussion on the motion or questions, comments? Mr. Woodsey.
So there's no real exchange here. It's just that the designation of lot of record will be removed in exchange for allowing the special use to be built.
Correct.
Dwelling to be used, but why would it need a special use? Just trying to understand it.
My understanding, there was an ad hoc committee that.
I was on it, yeah.
Yeah, so they, I believe that was how they.
Is the process?
The best avenue for this and
Okay.
it could go case by case potentially, is my understanding.
I understand that. Thank you.
Because he's abandoning one and gaining one through the special use process where it's fit based on those criteria that we talked about, like the
Okay,
tree cover and other terrain issues.
thank you.
Mr. Wahlberg?
This may seem like a really dumb question, but assuming the applicant owns both properties,
Yes, they have,
just because it's a
Yes.
farm family that, was it a family member?
that is one of the requirements.
Yeah, I assumed that, but I didn't read it here, so thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion that's presented? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Carries. Next, I need a motion to approve special use permit 11-2023 10798 Shaw Road Bed and Breakfast Establishment, special use. Motion by Mr. Bueller. Seconded by Mr. Curry. Ms. Roberts or Mr. Wiltie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the 2 years or plus that I've been on this board, I've never seen a case come to us by the ZBA where there were no findings of fact. The proposed findings of fact, which are recounted again in the last page of the state's attorney's memo, were draft findings of fact put together by staff that they wanted the ZBA to look at and approve. But as you know from the record, the ZBA voted 2-2, and having been a tie, they were not approved. Then they came back with 5 conditions, one of which uses a different word. It used guests instead of adults, and it comes up with the number 16 instead of 10. But in any event, we have, as a county board tonight, findings of fact, A through F, that we grind through sometimes on these special uses to even look at. Now, there are 3 things that can happen tonight, and I put on your desk a slip that sets forth section 2.7.5 of the zoning code entitled procedures. Yes, the third option in that is that we could grant or deny tonight, but we don't really have a record. Remember the discussion last time with the solar thing, how we have to find it in the record? We don't even have a finding of fact in the record that we can look at, compare, disagree with, agree with. And without any findings of fact, I think that the only real legitimate alternative open to this board tonight is the second part, which is I have underlined, and it says, or the county board may refer the matter back to the zoning board of appeals for further consideration. There's just no way we can have a decent discussion about this tonight. There's no way we should be the finders of fact on this tonight. And the fact of the matter that the lengthy meeting got to the point that they couldn't even consider the text amendment. I think this needs to go back to the ZBA. I think they need to combine it with the text amendment. There ought to be a vote on the findings of fact that come back to this board so we know what the ZBA recommends and we know what the text amendment may or may not say, what it's proposed to be said. To do any other way is just to sit here and act without any basis, in fact. So I move that we, as the county board, under 2.7.5 procedures, that we refer the matter back to the zoning board of appeals for further consideration, and I so move.
Second. Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Wiltie and seconded by Mr. Curry. Ms. Smith, please.
I just have a point of discussion. The text amendment that they have put forward does not have anything to do with the bed and breakfast.
I understand.
So it is their option whether they want to combine those or not. I just want to make it clear, it's 2 separate issues. The text amendment for short-term rental is different than the bed and breakfast because we already have that in our zoning code. But that does not prevent you from referring it back to the ZBA. I just want to make that clear, but there's 2 separate text or two separate applications before the ZBA.
Mr. Wiltsey?
Thank you. I do understand that. Look, this isn't a hotel or a motel, but this is a place that people will rent if it passes to be in. And there, we have to have some safety codes that are higher than just a common residential safety code. We have to have a license, I think, for this type of operation. We don't have one. We have to set what the figure for the license is. We have to set up what the safety requirements are, door exits and everything, fire inspections, annual, semi-annual, whatever. All that really, in my personal opinion, and when I was with Des Plaines and this started, we did this. That stuff has to be in place before we put together any special uses. And that may be different from the text amendment that the state's attorney's talking about, but there's just not enough here for us to act tonight. We need to send it back, get the findings of fact, and see if we can get some greater clarification on what and how this will be done or is proposed to be done. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Roberts, did you have something?
Just discussion, do you want me to present anything from the report from the zoning board of appeals just for food for thought, or is that?
Not yet. Mr. Curry here.
You know, we've had in the past couple months quite a bit of ZBA, and every time we get something from the ZBA, I get the proposed structure or dwelling has no adverse or substantial adverse effect on the adjacent properties. Yet I can Google and find 15 things that affects adversely to neighboring or adjacent properties. Is there a way, and Tricia, maybe you can explain this, that we attach a special use so that if somebody does abuse a rule within, even if the text amendment doesn't happen, a bed and breakfast, they get the permit yanked and they're not going to have that permit any longer?
I think what you're talking about, just in general, not necessarily specific to this, because you kind of talked about, you see this all the time. Then special uses then can make conditions to then specialize for this particular property based on the evidence that was presented that will then address any issues that you may have towards that particular project.
Right. So in the fact as if the Deer Woods issue happened and they abused that rule once, that permit be pulled and they can never do that since it's attached to that property for the life of that dwelling.
Well, it becomes more complicated than that when it's a special use versus a temporary use permit. Special use permits have to go through a process. They have due process rights. You can't just summarily take something from them without a procedure. Typically, it is us filing for an injunction and then a revocation of that special use in court. Right, and so one of the things that we're looking at, not in regard to the bed and breakfast, but in regard to the text amendment regarding short-term rentals, is some sort of licensing or permitting mechanism. Because the language that was proposed, and I believe the applicant said at the ZBA that they were not opposed to beefing up that language or having it more robust. So that's one of the things that we're looking at to bring to the ZBA at the next meeting regarding short-term rentals. Now that's different than the bed and breakfasts, because that's in your code already and does not have those requirements.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Wiltsey's assessment, at least to a point, in that I think what we got is kind of a mess from the ZBA. The inconsistency between the two votes of the findings of fact and then approval of the project, I'm not comfortable with personally. I have no problems if the ZBA votes down or disagrees with the findings of fact and then votes down the project. But where I'm confused is to try and understand what they saw or how they felt about the project when they vote down the findings of fact, but then vote for the project. I think that in and of itself leads to them not truly understanding what they're doing or where they're going with it. So I am all for sending it back to ZBA for further consideration to rectify exactly what direction they're giving us that they heard in the evidence and saw in the evidence. And while I recognize they're only an advisory committee, and we can overrule them, we can do all kinds of things. We can even adopt the findings of fact ourselves if we like. I think it's an important step to have the ZBA and have them consistent in what they're doing. And I think that's important as we move forward in everything.
Ms. Branson?
I would also like to send this back to the ZBA. I don't think we have what we need to do this right tonight. And I think it's important we do get it right. But I also understand that our long-term chairman of the ZBA recently stepped down from his position. And so there's a lot of turmoil and change with the ZBA right now. And I think that may have led to some of this inconsistencies that we're receiving. And anyway, I think we need to send it back and let them get it right so that we can do our job the way it should be done.
Mr. Thornberry?
I was basically going to say the same thing. I mean, if the ZBA isn't going to do their job, how can they expect us to do ours? And that's the way I look at this. That's exactly what happened. They didn't want to do their job, so they sent it on up here, letting us take the heat for it. And I think it needs to go back and let them do their job.
Ms. Branson?
I don't think it's appropriate to be bad-mouthing the ZBA because they work really hard. They're volunteers and they're doing the best they can, but you've got a learning curve when you've got new staff or new members on the ZBA. And having had a chairman there for a long, long time, it's going to take a while for them to get the kinks worked out. And I think this is just a really big hiccup that we got to deal with and send it back, let them get it worked out, and then bring it back before us.
Chairman Riley?
I was at the meeting. Yes, there was a lot of confusion. Mr. Hale took over as the new chairman. Got a lot to learn and about procedure and things like that. And do have one newer member, but he's very seasoned in his opinion and his knowledge on the ZBA. So before we condemn him too much, let's take that into consideration. And I'm all for what Mr. Johnson said and Mr. Curry, Mr. Wiltsey as well. I think we need to try to figure out how we can get this back to the ZBA with just that issue at hand at one meeting so that they can maybe put the other issue, the text amendment, on a back burner. I don't know exactly how all that works. I'm still learning on a lot of this myself, but before we condemn the group, let's make sure and give them every opportunity to get this right. And I support the idea of sending it back to the ZBA. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion, or I'm not sure if we should take a consensus? Do we want to hear more? Do we want to, I don't know if we vote on Mr. Wiltsey's?
Got a motion, a amendment to the motion. So I think we need to act on that first.
Okay, so we don't want any more presentation from Ms. Roberts? Nobody else wants anything more?
I think we're pretty clear on what we want to do here as far as sending it back. So I don't want to stifle Ms. Roberts either, but Mr. Curry?
I guess what are we hoping happens if we send it back to the ZBA? You say then make it right. What is right? So be prepared that this is going to come back.
Are you questioning someone particular?
In general. If we're sending this back to the ZBA, okay, they're going to come back with different verbiage, okay? Is this something we want in Boone County, or do we want stipulations and rules and guidelines attached to a special use permit? And do we propose that or take that to the board or to the ZBA, or are we allowed to make that change here?
Okay. Ms. Smith, go ahead.
So your question is, if you as the board can add conditions even if the ZBA does not, you can, as long as they're related to the evidence that was presented at the ZBA. So if there's conditions that they haven't added that you think are necessary, the board can certainly adopt those conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
I think to answer Mr. Curry's question for myself personally, I think I'd like to see consistency with the ZBA. Either vote down the findings of fact, vote down the project, vote for the findings of fact, vote for the project, not some of one and some of another. That that's an inconsistency that tells me they didn't understand what they were hearing and what they were seeing and what they were reading. And granted, yes, it's been stated that they've had a change in leadership on that committee, and I think that's part of what happened, just understanding and the confusion, and that's understandable. So I don't think it's a bad thing to take a step back and let them go back through it. And there may be some more information that they, just from a lack of time, didn't get to, and a fear of not trying to extend the meeting longer or add another meeting or things like that and moving it forward. I think one of the things we have to fight against as a board, whether at this level or other committee levels or things, just because something's before us doesn't mean it has to move forward that night. In many instances, that it can be pushed over to the next meeting or add a meeting or things like that. If there are more things that need to be gone through and looked at, that's an important step that we have to take as leaders to look at that and recognize when do we need more information, need to study this more and learn from it. And I think this is a situation where I'd like to see more clarity and more consistency in what their decisions are, regardless of what they are, however side.
Okay, we have a motion to refer special use permit 11-2023 back to the zoning board of appeals for further consideration. Is there any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in, sorry, Ms. Roberts.
Can we just make sure we're referring it back to the date certain of July 25th?
Well, I think what we have to do first is we had a motion to approve it and a second. Mr. Wiltie, you made an amendment to that motion, correct?
Well, yeah, but actually, it's a motion. My motion is to refer the matter back to the ZBA. Now, whether you want to consider that as an amendment or not, that should be taken first.
I think we should consider that as an amendment to the motion, correct? Am I looking at that wrong?
We're just adding the date of the ZBA meeting, that he's referring back to the ZBA meeting of July 25th.
So it serves as a publication.
Yeah,
It all has to be done.
It's a separate motion that would supersede the original.
There we go. All right, thank you. Sorry, Ray, go ahead.
Okay, so you mentioned the date then, July 25th? Is that what you said?
July 25th at the 7 p.m.
Is there any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
All right, now we're going to go back to monthly presentations. Go ahead, Ray, sorry.
We're at 6.1, the public safety Boone County Sheriff.
Got a text, the sheriff's not going to be here tonight. Yep.
And we'll go to Highway, Boone County Highway Engineer, Mr. Crum.
We've had a fairly busy month throughout the county with our resurfacing projects. We just finished yesterday. So under construction, got items 1, 2, and 3. That's about a little over $7.5 million worth of construction that we're performing this year, which is substantially higher than past years. Out of that $7.5 million, we're just over $3 million of competitive grants, and we've got various other funds going in there. So we're moving along with that. Same thing with the planning and design. We've got a number of planning and design projects that are in the hopper. We'll continue to work on those. The county-wide pavement markings will start hopefully next week. So just trying to remind motorists to watch for signs and wet paint out there. That's always a headache for us. And then Wayne Volk started. He was starting in our office. He is a seasoned person that's he's retired, and he's working 20 hours in our office. We get great help. I'm hoping to get his PE license activated or reactivated. And so, if I get hit by a bus or whatever, something happens, we do have a backup plan for that. So it's a great thing and additional help. Concerns, there's one just concern I wanted to bring to the board, and this isn't a Boone County concern. This is a state or even national-wide concern. Currently, there's a lot of funding, federal funds, that is infrastructure funds that is being thrown at fiber optics and getting rural connections, which is a great thing. However, the volume of money and the speed at which that's being thrown out there, and the tight labor market is causing, on our side of things, where we have to maintain the right of way, is causing some issues. And so we're addressing those, but I just wanted to more or less bring it to the board's attention that's a concern, and we're looking at it from a kind of a regional, statewide level, and seeing what we can do to make sure that our county assets and our local road assets are properly protected. And I'm open to any questions.
Mr. Mueller?
So Justin, on the Poplar Grove Bridge, because I farmed just north there, I did walk down and looked at the surface on that bridge. Who's in charge of making sure it's level and smooth? All right.
That's no problem.
Looking.
So it will. So it goes we poured that on June 20th. Yeah. There's a 7-day wet cure. So you get we have to, based on the curing process, we apply wet blankets right after that. So you do get a lot of kind of imperfections or kind of topical situations that make it look worse.
It just looked like, if you eyeballed it, it looked wavy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be going across that a lot.
Yeah. And honestly, there was a couple of things that occurred during the pouring operation that were a challenge. We do have a grooving operation after it's all done, so it'll get grooved and milled across. I still have concerns with that, so that, I'm not disregarding your comments. We're doing what we can to work with that. We do have the approaches on both sides that are scheduled to be poured next week, so we're working to try to make things as smooth as possible. Yeah. I'm it kind of, the contractor ultimately takes certain responsibility, but I have oversight of that construction process. So
I'm just curious. So thank you.
Mr. Riley.
Just a quick question, Justin. I don't know if it's something you can answer or not, but given today's announcement about the Metro Train expansion project coming through Huntley, Belvedere, and then on to Rockford, is there any road concerns that you have as far as the crossings go? I know crossings are generally obviously belong to the railway, and it's their responsibility to maintain and stuff, but do you have any concerns over any of the crossings, over any of the roads that you have to maintain?
Yeah, the railroad organization in general is a very difficult, I've always been told that if you're going to build a roadway, don't build it through or across the railroad if you can, or Indian Burial Grounds, or I forget what that was. There's 3 items, and railroad is the top 3. They're very powerful. Been there a long time, and it's very difficult. So I don't see that position changing at all, and necessarily for the better or for the worse. I understand that through that, I think they're using Rebuild Illinois funds for that project, and through that, they will be doing some upgrades. Certainly, there'll be some at-grade crossing considerations and improvements and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's from my perspective anyway, it's not a negative thing. So.
All right, very good. Thank you. Big news, but.
Ms. Branson.
Just a quick question. My family's all down in Sycamore, and I go down Irene Road quite frequently. Do you have any idea how long that will be closed for?
So you're talking about the section between north of 20, then the reroute. So that's a county project, and that's kind of I don't know. I do know that they're hoping to get it completed this season. Outside of that, I'll talk with the city. It's a city project. I'll talk with them and see if I can get a more accurate number to report back to you on when that would be reopened.
You don't have to get back to me.
I'm curious too. It's a
season.
That's a good question though.
I expect it to take a while.
Mr. Thornberry?
I was going, excuse me, the gates that they just put up on Appleton Road, is that because of the train that they're planning on bringing through here? Or did they just do that for a safety measure per se?
And that's a city thing that I'll have to check into. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. No, I'm sorry.
They put one up on the through rail, but they didn't put one up on the switch rail.
Sure. Okay, yeah, I'll look into see what I can find out.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. Crum? Okay, thank you. Thank you. On to number 7 here, administrative quarterly report. Ms. Tobin.
Sure, you have my report in your board docs. Just kind of highlights the different things that our office has been working on or will be working on over the next few months. We've been really busy. We do have a full staff, which is wonderful. And we also have our summer intern for the planning department, which has been great. She's been helping Jesse go through files and creating a database that'll help retrieving the documents much more streamlined in the future. So it's been really helpful. Sheriff's Storage Building, we will be working on a bid for the new fence here in the next month or so. Obviously, before we can move any storage items out to that facility, it needs to be secure. So we need to remove the old fence and one. So we'll be working on that. 2024 budget, all budget documents have been distributed to department heads. I've started meeting with some of them, and I have more meetings scheduled over the next few weeks. So we're moving forward with the 2024 budget already. Countywide building concepts, we're model of the courthouse. Originally we weren't going to do it, but they really suggested it. So they said they would work it into what was approved as part of the budget, just because there's so many corridors and add-ons to that building that they just said it would really be helpful to have that model. So we're kind of waiting for them to get done with that process before we have our next meeting. Boone County Public Transportation. Aaron Marshall, our PCOM manager, has been really busy. You'll see that here later in the agenda. We have numerous items that we'll be asking for your approval on as we go through that meeting, and she is here tonight. Finance, you'll be seeing next week a recommendation to purchase a new financial software package as well as full payroll package. So we'll finally, hopefully, with your approval, have an integrated system for the first time ever. So I'm really excited. I'm not excited about another conversion. I don't think anybody will be, but I think it'll be worth it. So you're gonna see that next week on the agenda. Veterans Assistance Commission, working with the state's attorney to determine the best way to implement the changes that were made by the PA 102-1132, which requires the county to provide the VAC employees with the same benefits that the county employees have. So we're kind of working with some other counties to see what they've done to implement those changes, because the statute also says that they shouldn't be county employees. So just trying to work through that. So hopefully we'll come up with a response to that rather quickly. Courthouse basement cleanup, that continues to progress. We'll be meeting with DuraClean and the museum director as we move forward with that. It's going to be a process. I don't see it taking, just a couple of weeks. I see it being, 2, 3, 4 months before we get that project completed. The IPBC vendor change. This is our cooperative that we have with our health insurance with a lot of other government entities. They are transitioning their employee benefit, their third-party employee benefit provider from Benefit Solver to a company called PlanSource, which I think will be helpful in the long run. But here again, it's just another conversion that IPBC will be going through, but it also is time-consuming on our end, or I should say Aaron's end as well. So we'll be working on that through July and August. Update to the county code. It has now been codified through Ordinance 2311. It hadn't been updated in about a year and a half. So we're happy to have that done. Collective bargaining. We meet next Monday for patrol and dispatch. So we're still moving forward with working on finalizing those contracts. And then personnel policy, we're going to have some updates coming before you, some recommendations here in the next couple of months as well. That's kind of the lowdown. I'll take any questions, or you're always welcome to call me or email me for further information.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Tobin? Okay, seeing none. go to the building quarterly department presentation. Don't know if do we have Mr. Bliss or Ms. Zimmerman? No?
So.
No one's here for this. Next is the GIS. Ms. Cox, please.
That's why I knew he wasn't coming. Hello. I don't, again, as usual, really don't have much to add other than what's on my report for the month. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about it. The only thing I will add is I did put it at the end there, but I will have the new plat book updated by the fair. Again, I've been trying every year. So by July 1st of each year, I've been cutting off any updates that are going on so that I have some point of reference to begin for the plat books, when they come out in August, will be up to date as of July 1st from the prior year. So, and some people do care to know that, so. Other than that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments for Ms. Cox?
Do have one.
Mr. Bueller?
So on the GSA, on the Boone County website, all the lot records and stuff, that just gets updated the first of July every year, or is it go?
Oh, no.
Like an ongoing thing?
The online maps, usually if I have major updates, like any type of combinations or splits or something like that, I try to run it weekly. It's a script I have to run. And then I'll do that weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on how much activity we have in, land use changes. But otherwise, once that's updated, as soon as I update it, it instantly updates online within like 2 minutes, I think. So no, what I'm saying by the July 1st deadline was I had to find a spot somewhere to stop so that I could print out the books from, the prior year.
No, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No one else have anything? Okay. Thank you. On to the planning quarterly department presentation. Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I provided the report on board docs. I maintain the report the same as my predecessor, just to keep the same point of reference. There's really nothing outstanding outlined within that report. I do have a couple notes here. We do have several zoning items in the queue, one important item being a new solar application. And we are vetting it through the new solar ordinance process. Staff has convened for a couple meetings now regarding the new application process and the newly adopted ordinance. So that should be coming your way once we get through all that. In addition, we've hired a summer intern. That was
Sorry.
He started July 22nd and is working on a variety of items. Some of the projects we're working on are standardizing the zoning files. A lot of our hard copy zoning files were created a little bit differently than in the past. So we're working on organizing and renaming them so that they're consistent with the historic files from years and years ago. She's also creating an extensive database for our planning layer, which has also not been updated for some time. And she's making great progress on that. We're working on combing through the department's website, removing items that are not applicable, and to bring the department materials up to date, as well as she is assisting in modernizing the zoning applications and making the documents fillable. Some of the zoning documents haven't been updated in quite some time. Other than that, future projects for the new year include working on evaluating the current zoning code, subdivision ordinance, as well as the 2029 comprehensive plan, possible updates that may be needed for each document, and investigating a permitting system or interface for future planning items similar to that of the building permits.
Any question, Robert? I'm not seeing any. Anything else, Ms. Roberts?
Nope, that's it.
Does anyone have any discussion on the written monthly departmental reports update? Seeing none. Going on to the new business. Need a motion to approve the claims with the understanding that Carl Johnson abstained from voting on all claims presented by William Charles, Northern Illinois Service Company, Core and Maine, all claims submitted by the Boone County Highway Department, and all claims submitted by any county department regarding sewage, water, construction, and excavation. Motion by Mr. Mueller.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Curry. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. We got a roll call. That one we got a roll call.
Yep.
All right, so the roll call vote, Rodney Riley, yes. Brian Curry.
Yes.
Ryan Schneider.
Yes.
Dave Wiltsey.
Aye.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Brett Mueller.
Aye.
Tom Wahlberg.
Yes.
Melissa Patterson.
Yes.
Dana Logston.
Aye.
Jerry Branson.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Aye.
Marion Thornberry.
Yes.
Motion's passed. Okay, good.
Motion carried. Yep. 9.2, raffles. Do we need a motion to move these? No. I believe so. They'll just be moved to the county board.
Except there's one.
No, they're just, but I'm sorry.
The American Legion is Class D. Has to be, I think they're here too. Oh, did they leave?
Oh, I think they left.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
Do they have to be at the admin or can they be at the?
Well, our ordinance requires them to be, to at least come before the board.
Ms. Branson.
Class D.
If I screwed up, I apologize, but they asked me why they needed to be here before the meeting because they said they've never had to come in before, and I told them I didn't think they needed to be here, which is probably why they left, and they were gonna talk to our chairman. And so they did come in, and we told them they didn't have to wait around.
And I guess, yeah, in the past, I don't think we've maybe not quite been following the ordinance because they applied for a Class D, and a Class D in our ordinance requires them to come before the committee, before the board. So
I dropped the ball on that one, thank you.
And it's my fault.
Nope, that's
My apologies.
Mr. Mueller?
Can we advance it to full board and they can come at full board?
Idea. Could be.
I mean, I would think you could maybe just approve the licensing even if they're, I don't know. What do you think, Tricia?
I mean, they did technically come tonight, right?
I saw
They were
them.
here, they were here.
I talked to them.
They were here.
I mean, did anyone have any questions about their application? Did you get a chance to look at that? And I would say if you wouldn't have any questions for them as applicants, then it would be okay to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Wiltsey and seconded by Ms. Branson. Who was that? Okay. You have the wording of the motion, correct?
I think it would just be a motion to approve the raffle application for the American Legion Post 77
Yes.
for the Class D license.
Or any other discussion on this? Do we need a roll call or? No. So no other discussion? Although Mr. Thornberry? No?
Why are we voting special on the American Legion?
She just explained that.
Class C.
It's a Class.
Different classification.
Just a different class?
To do with
Class D.
So the Class D in your ordinance says, and they're basically the raffle licenses that go the entire year so that they don't have to keep coming back every single time they have a raffle, which is what the American Legion does. So that just requires them to be present. So there's two things that would make a raffle come before you. It's a Class D, or if they're expecting to spend more than $10,000 in the reward or in the award money, then they are expected to come before the board.
Basically, a Class C is a year request.
D.
Class D.
Or C.
D.
D, C, E, B.
D.
The reason we're doing this is because it's a year-long.
Correct.
Right. Okay, no problem.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. 9.3, you need a motion to approve. Motion to approve the IGA with Boone County Council on Aging for non-metro public transportation under section 5311, operating and downstate operating assistance programs for state fiscal year 2024.
Moved.
Motion by Mr. Curry,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Branson. Discussion?
So I'll introduce, for those of you that have not met Erin Marshall, our PCOM and our grants manager, this is Erin. So she has quite a few items tonight before you. She did prepare a memo that she'll kind of go through things ahead of time so that you know why she's here with everything.
Hello, everyone. So the next couple items, 3, 4, 5, and 6, are things that would bring us in standing with requirements for our 5311 and our downstate operating assistance program for public transportation. So these are grant fundings that we get. We had an audit in April, and these are some of the things that we need to either bring up to date or just renew. So the purchase services agreement is something that outlines the responsibilities of BCCA, as well as it includes information from the Federal Transportation Administration about what their requirements are, and then it kind of guides us in what we want the future of public transportation for Boone County to look like. For the procurement plan, which is 9.4, we just had to bring our purchasing levels in line with the state requirements. We had met federal requirements, but the state asked us to just make slight adjustments for transportation purchases. So we've done that. The Title VI policy was last renewed in 2018, and that just needs to be renewed again. It's something that we just need to do every 3 years. So nothing has changed in that. If you do want to see what has changed for the procurement policy, that starts on page 30 of the document that's attached. So you can take a look at that. And then for the safety guide, it involves the Boone County Council on Aging had one, but because we are the grantee, we had to have one as well. So that kind of gives it from safety guidance from a higher perspective in terms of things that are required from the state and federal level. And then, yep, that takes us through 6.
Okay. Any discussion? Oh, Ms. Patterson?
Can you just clarify for me, and I apologize, I was making notes, was Title VI the one that you said was last renewed in 2018?
Correct.
It number 6. So was it COVID? If it has to be renewed every 3 years, was there some sort of a?
That's a requirement that the state of Illinois Department of Transportation has for us.
Right, but 2018 is 5 years. I guess I'm asking why.
Past due. We're past due, yes.
Okay, got it. Okay. I'm not good at math, so I was just making sure. I'm like, wasn't adding up.
No, you're good.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'm just going to say, I think this just goes to show that, we have to keep our positions filled. We have to make sure we have qualified people, which we do. I appreciate the work that you've done, getting us up to date on all this stuff, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Laura? Do we need a roll call for this? No?
No.
Okay, seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. 9.4, I need a motion to approve the amendments to the Boone County FTA procurement policy as presented. Motion by Ms. Branson, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. 9.5, I need a motion to approve resolution 23-15, adopting a Title VI plan for Boone County.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Thornberry, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in, well, Ms. Roberts, or not, Ms. Tobin.
I just want to, it's resolution 23-15. It's the updated resolution adopting the plan. Did you say that? Maybe you said that.
I said 23-15.
Okay, I think you did. I was zoning out. Okay.
Sorry.
Robert. Okay, any, no other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. 9.6. I need a motion to approve the Boone County Public Transit Safety Guide as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. I think that's nothing else. No other questions for Marshall, correct?
We got one more item.
One more item. The 9.7, I did this as a separate memo.
Okay. 9.7, I need a motion to approve proposal from Larson and Darby to provide a facility feasibility study for the Boone County Transportation Center. The cost is not to exceed $49,800 and will be paid using IDOT CARES funding.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wiltsey, seconded by Mr. Curry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on this?
I guess I'd like
Mr. Walberg?
Can we, I guess, get a little bit more detail on it? Obviously, I'm aware of the grant that we got for $3 million, assuming this money would come out of that, correct?
If I could. No, this is a different, that's part of the 3 million is out of the Rebuild Illinois. That's the actual grant. This, the feasibility study money actually is a different pot of money. It's a CARES, it's ARPA money that was designated specifically for 5311 entities. So it would come out of that funding. It was recommended from RMTD actually that Larson and Darby has the extensive experience in the transportation field and building numerous facilities like this, that they would be the best architect to handle this kind of work for us. So we've been awarded this grant, but now we need to figure out where the best location is going to be for this grant and what we can afford. So that's what they're going to go into pretty extensive detail and come back with a recommendation as to where this facility should go.
For $50,000.
Yes.
For $50,000, can we get recommendations on more than one location?
There's actually 3 locations.
Okay.
So in their proposal, one of the locations is the old Belvedere Motors building that we currently own. The second location, just to get an idea of a new building, is actually the green space next to the county admin building right here. So they'll give us a recommendation on a new building. And then the third location is actually out by the highway department, kind of behind animal services in that location. So those are the 3 different locations. And the reason it's so expensive, because I asked why it was so expensive too, is they're actually be bringing in some engineers to actually do some of the engineering work so we can get some better estimates. So that's why it was more expensive.
Ms. Patterson?
Like, I'm all in favor, like I know, because these were the buses that had the catalytic converters stolen, correct? Like, to me, in my mind, like this doesn't need to be anything elaborate. Like I'm thinking like a school bus garage type of a thing. You know, I mean, it doesn't need waiting rooms. Like, I mean, is there,
Yeah.
so
this will actually have employees in it. So all the dispatchers and staff that are currently at Council on Aging operating this would actually move to the new facility. So plus we've been in discussions with RMTD that it could also possibly be a transfer center.
Okay.
So there are
multiple, be bigger.
Yes, there's multiple different uses. Yeah. And it will be housing staff.
Okay. All right. My mind was not.
I know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. 8.8, need a motion to approve the amendments to the Boone County Health Department's fee schedule as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Ms. Mayo?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Amanda Mayo with the Boone County Health Department. Good to see you all and welcome to the members of the public who are present. I know that tonight is the admin meeting and next week is finance, so I appreciate the flexibility of Committee of the Whole to allow me to break down the information on our environmental fees. This evening, I actually received a scholarship to attend representing the state of Illinois to a national public health conference next week, so I'm going to be out of town. So appreciate the flexibility. Also wanted to let everyone know that I have two members of the Board of Health that are here, Jen and Jackie, our president, and Amy Olson, who's our secretary, and they're present here as well to help answer any questions that you might have. I know in August as well, as part of Becky's process to go through the different departmental budgets, I've been asked to come and give a wider overview of our proposed FY24 budget. So as a precursor to this, want to discuss fees. So I know many of you are newer to the board and perhaps weren't here the last time that the health department brought fees forward. So if I was going to sum it up in one or two sentences, most of the health department budget is made up of fees, grants, and tax levy. That's the simplest way I can sort of put it in a nutshell. So one of the major ways in which we break even or recoup costs is through fees. And the last time that we brought environmental fees forward was 2017, 2018. And so we're bringing them again forward to your attention tonight. We've been discussing this particular fee proposal with county admin since about March. Have had multiple meetings with Becky's office and her staff, as well as two Board of Health meetings where the fees have been discussed at great detail. I know you guys have begun the process of approving other departments. I believe planning had some fees that came forward last month. Health department's here tonight. I know there are other county departments looking at their fees as well to kind of see where they're at and where they might need to be and plan to bring those forward to you all. So I know that up on the screen, Becky's got the first page of the materials that are put together for all of you. And this is a worksheet that Becky gave our office to fill out to kind of simplify it and make it really clear. So just to kind of walk you through the way that this is set up, the top portion are specifically related to our food program. And then the bottom half is specifically related to well, septic, and laboratory fees. So that's how the worksheet is broken down. And the fee increases that we're proposing are not designed to completely eliminate the cost deficit that we experience running these environmental programs. It's designed to close the gap. So one reasonable approach that I would bring forward to you all for consideration is a combination of raising the fees and charging the user, whether it be a well and septic permit, a restaurant fee, et cetera, laboratory fee for a water sample, and then also taking a look at tax levy and how we utilize that. Many counties do a combination, and in talking with the Board of Health Finance Committee and Becky's office determined that that might be the most reasonable approach to bring forward to all of you. So right now, as the fees stand at the moment, we've have projected the deficit of a little over $107,000, and the proposal of increasing the fees by approximately 25%. We rounded up or down to make it cleaner for the public. That was actually a suggestion that County Admin and Mr. Larson had when I met with them to kind of talk through the best way to bring this forward. That would actually reduce that gap and bring us to a combined total of about $69,525.15. And those are the totals at the bottom of each section added together. So that's what you have in front of you, are current fees and then the proposed fees, approximately 25%. So just a couple of frequently asked questions that have come up in the past when we've brought fees forward that I think might be helpful for me to put out there just right off the bat for clarification. The current fee proposal related to our food program fees for food permits does not include any charge for any of the not-for-profits that are operating community dinners or fundraisers or benefits. That was something that was decided long ago in this county, and we're perfectly willing to keep that up. That's a good service that we can provide to the community. I do have to send staff out to complete those inspections, and I have clerical staff who have to complete paperwork in the office. So the money does have to be recouped somehow, and this proposal helps to account for that. But in this particular proposal, we're not proposing to charge not-for-profits any fee when they're coming and requesting a food permit. So I wanted to make sure that I clarified that as well. Pages 2 to 3 of the packet that was uploaded for all of you includes a pretty comprehensive county by county comparison, because in the past, this board has asked us to take a look at that. So I wanted to make sure to include that. This is a little bit hard to interpret because we live in the great decentralized state of Illinois where everything varies county to county. Some counties charge fees, some counties use solely levy money, some counties charge fees only and don't use levy money. So it's really hard. I have 3 examples when we were conducting this just to make sure that everybody is clear. So some counties receive more levy monies than Boone. So for example, we took a look at some surrounding counties. The Winnebago County tax levy is about 24% of their operating budget. And it's my understanding in talking to their administrator that they do use their levy tax dollars to help offset some of the costs to complete their operations and not put it all solely on the user. DeKalb has about 17% of their budget that makes up the levy money that they receive. McHenry County is 28%. And Boone County is 8%. So again, balancing how much we're going to charge the user with how much levy money we receive or that we would receive in a future to be able to break even with our operating expenses. So some of the fees that were reported to my environmental health supervisor when this was conducted are now outdated because in talking with many of the environmental departments across the region, they're also going through this same process because costs are up for gas and staffing and all the work that's being done across the state at local health departments. So I know that some of the information presented here is actually now out of date. They're going before their county boards as well, having these same discussions. So some counties do charge their not-for-profits for food fees, others do not. We're one of the counties that hasn't historically. So sometimes that's a way that a county might recoup their costs. Another question that comes up a lot is related to the health department's reserve fund. So I kind of wanted to address that as well. We use our reserve fund for 3 primary things. One is floating quarterly loans to the state and federal government for all of the grants that we receive. So for example, the quarterly loan that we float to the federal government any given quarter is about $250,000 to $300,000. And that is primarily our departmental justice grants that we have that we're running for our behavioral health programs. And then we also float loans to the state government for all the grants that we have through them. And that comes up to about just a little under $200,000. So that eats up a whole bunch of our reserve in what gets loaned every quarter. Then we also maintain, or we attempt to maintain, about 3 to 6 months worth of operating expenses in our reserve fund. And in talking with county admin, I know that the county does that as well for their general funds and their general expenditures. So our operating expenses for 3 to 6 months of operations is anywhere from $500,000 to about $1.1 million. So we have that calculated in And that's what we would use our reserve funds for if we needed to operate without any assistance from anybody, county, state, federal, grantors, et cetera, right? And then the other thing that we use that fund for is any type of public health emergency. So a natural disaster, an epidemic, a pandemic, anything of that nature where we might need to mobilize operations quickly and have some money set aside to be able to do that. So just to clarify, those are the three ways that we use those reserve dollars. We don't use that as a way to offset yearly operating expenses specifically related to any type of potential fee for service program or activity that we do that is state mandated or county mandated. So I wanted to kind of just give that overview, cover a little bit of frequently asked questions that I know come up pretty regularly when we bring fees forward. And I don't know, Becky or Ryan, if you have anything to add.
No, it's a shocking number when you point out the comparisons of percentage of levies that used in our surrounding areas. It's drastic. And it does help me understand when you point out that the reserve money does need to be fronted. So it doesn't sit in our accounts. It goes forward until the grant money's received. So it's stuff that needs to sit in that reserve. So it makes sense to me. So it helps me understand, I guess.
Sure.
Because my first question would be like, why aren't you using the reserves?
Yeah, for sure. And that's that's an absolutely reasonable question. So given that we've gotten it in the past when we brought fees forward, I wanted to make sure that I just addressed it right off the bat. I'm happy to answer more specific questions about it. I also get the question a lot, like, why aren't there grants to cover these programs? Well, we do approximately have about 20% of the salary expenses of the staff that work in the environmental health center of our department. We're able to actually use grants to cover. And so when we calculated this deficit and this fee increase proposal, we removed that 20%, right? So the salary amounts that are listed under the top section for food and the bottom section for well, septic, and laboratory does not include anything that we're able to have a grant to cover a portion of a staff member. So for example, we have a federal FDA food code grant that we received that's not permanent, it's for 3 years, and it helps to cover a small percentage of all of these staff's time. So we removed that from what we're then projecting still as our deficit.
Mr. Mueller?
So just clarification on like the fixed site, number one, high risk multi-department, that's a restaurant. They have to get a permit every year.
Exactly. Yep. Fixed establishments have to get a permit every year, and they're designated by FDA food code regulations based on their risk of operations. And based on their risk of operations depends on how many times we inspect them and what the inspection forms look like and the types of things that we're looking for. So an inspection at Walmart is going to be very different than an inspection at the Boone County Family Restaurant. It's going to be very different from an inspection at McDonald's. So all of those facilities that I just mentioned are going to be classified in different categories.
Mr. Welber?
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining that. Is there, I guess, can you give an example? I guess I'm trying to distinguish a little bit of the difference between the high risk and medium risk and low risk, just for clarity.
Like how restaurants are, I'm sorry, I just want to ask a clarifying question for your clarifying question, like how we do the risk categories?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's based on FDA food code delineation. So it's going to be based on the menu that's submitted, the type of operations that they're conducting, what type of potentially high risk or potentially hazardous preparation services that they are conducting, that their staff are conducting, or that their patrons are consuming. For example, a buffet is going to be much more risky than food coming out of the kitchen hot and heading straight to a table. So there's a whole matrix for this that's used by the FDA code that this county and all the other counties in Illinois have adopted because we were state mandated to do so. My goodness, it's been 6 years at this point. And we use that matrix to determine where restaurants or fixed establishments fall.
And my second part of that question is in regards to that is around the mobile food trucks. Obviously, it's very popular.
Yeah.
And it seems like a growing business in Boone County here. We're at the top end of those fees when we compare to other counties. And then your proposal is, to raising that even, 25% more, as you mentioned, low, medium, high. Can you kind of define that? Where is the group, where's the average group at?
Yeah, so most of, yeah, man, we have some of each. I would say the most of them are medium or high, and they're all also required to have a home stable kitchen location, which is called a commissary, which also has to be inspected to make sure that the food transfer from that kitchen to the actual mobile truck, whether it's raw or has been cooked and is going to be properly hot held or properly cold held, is handled appropriately and safely as well. And you're right, food trucks are absolutely exploding. And I know, especially with our neighboring counties, we've had many discussions with Winnebago and McHenry. I know that they are both having the discussion about mobile food trucks with their respective health department administrators and boards of health and county boards as well, because that industry is absolutely exploding. And people are struggling to even find like home kitchen commissaries to be able to get the food ready, to get it on the truck, to get it out to the, Rock River on a Tuesday night when there's 400 people down by the river. And I know we have some events that are happening here locally that are becoming increasingly popular.
Yes, maybe just a suggestion. I don't profess to know anything about this, but you've got one category that raises $40, you raise the next one $55, and then the high one's $80. I'm like, well, are we going to be, putting extra burden on these small businesses? That's all. I just want to.
Yeah, legit. That's absolutely legitimate. So the risk category again is based on how many inspections our department does, and so what they're paying for in that user fee is the amount of times or the amount of follow-ups that we are federally rolled down to state, rolled down to locally mandated to then go out and do that inspection, right? So that's included in. So you pay for a high-risk permit, you're getting 3+ inspections a year, as opposed to a low risk permit, which might be one inspection every year or one inspection every other year. And again, that's based on the FDA code matrix.
I was just thinking, was it fair to raise those two most popular categories the most, that maybe it should be a number. I don't know, something to consider.
For sure. And we've looked at, again, I think I was mentioning at the beginning, and then you bring up a good point too, how much of the burden of the expense of operation goes on the actual user versus how much of it do we want to offset or supplement with taxpayer money? Because those are really our options here, because we have to break even, right? So we can decide, the health department in conjunction with the county board, working on this, can decide to really set it up however we see fit. This is a pretty well thought out proposal based on, like I said, since March, multiple meetings with county admin, this committee of the whole chair with our county board liaison, Mr. Curry, with the Board of Health Finance Committee, looking at all those things, like what is an appropriate burden to place on the user for the user fee versus how much should be absorbed by taxpayer levy dollars, right?
Mr. Thornberry, this is first here. Did you have something, Sil?
She's doing a great job.
Ms. Patterson?
So again, to the food trucks and to what is going on here. So the problem is that we're looking at it's a moving target. So right now we're looking at these numbers and we're comparing McHenry, DeKalb and whatnot, but they're also raising prices. So they may raise prices higher than what we're looking at right now. And because it's a growing industry, everybody's got to be taking a look at that. So
for sure.
And if I can add one, and do we have any, have we lost any food trucks? I feel like we're gaining food trucks, not losing food trucks.
Mostly gaining food trucks has been sort of our, we have to permit all the food trucks. So we've mostly been gaining. It is an exploding industry. And it does add a level of risk because the physical kitchen has to be inspected and the food truck has to be inspected. But it's going relatively well. The majority of our food trucks in this area are, work really well with us. You'll sometimes drive by and you'll see, they'll pull into our parking lot and we'll do the inspection of their vehicle, or we're out at the fair. A lot of times we're out at the fair and that's where we catch a lot of our food trucks for one of their, they need several inspections a year and they have to be inspected. If they cross county lines, like I said, in the great decentralized state of Illinois, for better or for worse, this is the way our system is set up here. If they are operating at the city market in downtown Rockford, but they're also coming here for Buchanan Street Stroll, they have to have have two permits and they're permitted by two health departments paying two fees. And it does get tricky, right? Because they're getting different information and different fee structures from different health departments. But the reality is, you know, if Winnebago County has 24% of their budget is tax levy, perhaps they're using more of that to offset those fees. Or perhaps they're having a meeting just like this and getting ready to raise their fees even above and beyond what we're potentially proposing. And I'm not going to know the answer to that like right live in this moment, but yeah, it's a legitimate point.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that this is a great proposal to offset raising a tax or a levy from the taxpayer because inflation obviously has occurred. Everybody's eating that cost. I think they've done a good job that's not raised anything for since 2017 or 18.
It was 2017 and 18 when we did this. That's the last time we did this. Yeah.
Okay. So as everything's gone up, which the food truck or the vendor has increased their prices to offset their costs, now it's our turn to have to do that as well. So unfortunately, I hate tax just like the next person. I hate raises and fees just like the next person, but it's a necessity and it's just basically the trickle down. So I hate to use that word as well, but I use it.
We only have those few, we only have, like I mentioned, we only have the few locations where the money is coming from. And those are our options. We don't have the option to, you know, fundraise to cover these expenses or do some of the things that perhaps the private sector might be able to do to balance their budgets. These are literally the tools in the toolbox that I have to get that bottom dollar to zero so that I can present every year to the Board of Health and to you all a balanced budget, right? Like here's what the operating is going to look like. And we're not going to be dipping into health department reserve or county reserve because we've got these, this is how we're going to cover it. We're going to cover it with some with fees. We're going to cover some with tax levy. This is how we're going to make it happen so that the work it gets done.
For Logsdon?
First of all, Mr. Curry, eating the cost, well played, sir. I was just curious. So basically, does this mean that the people who own these food trucks are basically going to get saddled with like 300, 240, 175 just for home ops too? Like they weren't used to paying it, now they have to pay it?
So food trucks are currently charged a permit fee. One of the things we need.
Commissary though.
One of the things we needs to be added because we don't have a fee for it because of the explosion of these food trucks. Many of our food trucks previously had been using commissaries in other counties. And now that there are more like Boone County based and or a lot more operations happening in this county, we have to be able to permit and inspect now stable locations in county. And we don't have fees to account for that. So if we don't have a fee to account for it, then it means I still have to mandate, we're still mandated to send a staff member out to do it. The work has to happen, but I have no way to charge any type of user fee to say, this is how much it's going to be for the person's time, the clerical time, the copies, the supplies, the overhead expenditures of the health department, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so on that, right below that is something called variance, which is like $100. What means that?
What does a variance mean?
What does that mean?
So that would be similar to like a planning variance where if we have a fixed establishment that says, we want to defer a little bit from, kind of what's in the code or what's in the FDA regulations. And we want to have this position over here, or are we able to locate this hand sink, 2 inches more to the left, even though the, state code or the federal code says that it needs to be XYZ, then depending on what it is, we can grant a variance after reviewing the application if they need to alter their operations within that fixed establishment. So similar to like if you have planning and zoning and you're moving something outside of what the code stipulates that it needs to be. Yeah.
Ms. Patterson?
Yeah, if I can just add something, working in real estate, so all of the fees. So if a private sector is doing a well and septic inspection, like everything has been raised. So to me, this just falls right in line to go to speak to Mr. Curry's point with inflation and with what is going on. It isn't like you're raising rates and nobody else is. Across the board, it's happening.
For Thornberry?
Just for clarification, a commissary, Florida Grange is a commissary. We do not have, they do not have a food truck. We do not have a commissary. 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 We but they use our kitchen to supply their food truck, so therefore Flora Grange has to pay a higher rate for their license than they would if they didn't supply food trucks. So, I mean, the commissary license is higher than a regular license, permit, I should say.
And I know the users that pay that fee, Mr. Thornberry, do it a variety of different ways. I know you and I have had that conversation in talking to food trucks and food operations, saying, how do you guys handle this? Just give us a little education so that if somebody comes in and is proposing a new food truck, we can give them some advice, like where do you go, who do you talk to? A lot of the commissaries split that user fee cost. If they have 1 or 2 or 3 food trucks that are utilizing that kitchen, they can split that up, right? And then that can be divided up. We just have to inspect the kitchen in that case with the commissary. We don't need to do double, triple, quadruple inspections. We just have to make sure that kitchen is clean. And then we have to make sure that all of those food trucks that are operating out of the kitchen, when they're out doing their operations, are clean as well.
Did somebody else have something?
So, just one quick question, let's say, food truck had something that they could get, is there fines or anything like, or penalties, like if they don't do something correctly, or is it just their permits? Like, let's say they had a cooler that was supposed to be 32 degrees and it was 50 degrees.
That's a really good question.
Is there fines or fees for that, or is it just you get a slap in your hand and?
Yeah, no, it depends on it. That's a loaded question because it depends on like what the violation is. There are certain violations that we're able to work with them right on site and fix it. There are other violations where we may need to immediately remove the food that was being heated or cooled in that location and move it to another spot. There are times when we have to embargo and actually throw that food away because it's no longer safe. It depends. Our last resort is to pull a permit. We usually have been working with by the time it's time to talk about that, our file is pretty thick at the health department and we've been having multiple conversations. One of the things we've been doing to reduce the amount of non-compliance fees for any repeat additional inspections that we have to do on a user is what we call an administrative hearing, which is also in this proposal. That allows us to take, if there's been like a series of issues that have been going on and something has happened multiple times that needs to be addressed, rather than sending a staff member out, spending that time, incurring that cost, and then charging that user, we have basically a conference and we'll have multiple things that might need to be addressed in one meeting. We'll do a whole presentation. We'll go through all that stuff and we'll troubleshoot 3 or 4 or 5 non-emergency things at once. And then the user pays just one fee and we're able to work those things out all at the same time, as opposed to what we did before, which was every little thing we were going back out and we were charging a non-compliance fee. So we've actually been trying to streamline that, and that benefits the user because there's less expense involved with staff. If we're in-house receiving them, having that administrative hearing and able to address multiple things in the same meeting.
Is there any other discussion, questions, or comments on the proposal here? Yeah, anything else to add?
I don't think I have anything else to add. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor here. We don't need a roll call for this either. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
9.9. Need a motion to approve lease agreement for Belvedere Landfill Number 2 between the County of Boone with Belvedere Landfill Solar 2 East LLC and Belvedere Landfill Solar 2 West LLC.
So moved.
By Mr. Wiltsey. Seconded by Mr. Schneider. Does anyone want to talk about this? Smith?
I do. So in 2018, we had a company come to us, Terra Navigator, who proposed putting a solar farm on our landfill, which is the one just north of the county highway department. So at that time, we entered into a lease option with them and worked on a land contract with them to lease the land from us to put the solar farm on there. I think that was when solar was new and everyone anticipated in the lottery that they would pick a lot of the landfills and other, those type of uses to put the solar on. Well, the project was not picked in the lottery, so that's why it's continued to this point. So the special use has been approved by this county board, and they're at the point where they're almost ready to break ground. We're just still negotiating this lease agreement. And you do have the lease agreement on board docs tonight. So Terra Navigator did assign their rights to another company, Amoresco, who has set up these two companies, LLCs, to run the two solar farms that would be on the landfill. It's just split into two different projects based on what the requirements were back in 2018. And one's 2 megawatt and one's 1.5 megawatts. There is a representative from Amoresco here tonight, Don Fisher, who can answer any questions that you may have. But we'll be by, at the county board meeting, ask you to approve this lease agreement. I don't know if Don wants to speak to any of the particulars of that, or if anyone has any specific questions about the lease agreement. Most of the terms were negotiated by outside counsel back in 2018. We just had to look at a couple different provisions just based on, I guess maybe the structure of how the grants are now. One of the things we initially had negotiated a 25-year lease. It's now a 20-year lease, and that's based on their funding. Is that fair to say? So I don't know if anyone has any specific questions, wants us to go into details about what the contract entails. I know some of the board members were on here when we first talked about this in 2018.
Okay, discussion, Mr. Wiltsey?
Just briefly, because I mean, it's a 30-page document. I did skim it. One of the things I found that was interesting, and it was a good catch by council drafting it, was in the event that the land, which doesn't have taxability, becomes taxable as a consequence of this enterprise, that they're responsible for that property tax. And that's it.
That is correct. And sure.
Hi, thank you for your time. Dawn Fisher with Amoresco. It will be taxed. The solar system will be taxed, which is legislated by the state. And so we have taken all that into account. So there will be property taxes.
You pick that up.
We pay for that. That's right. That's correct. And so it's for the first year for both parcels is $26,000, and then that declines every year for 25 years due to depreciation. So, but it's a formula run by the states.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mueller?
So on the lease, I see in here it's 5,000 some dollars. Is that per acre? That's just by the kilowatt hour. It's not by an acre. Because a lot of the solar panels have been presented to us. I've seen on personal, it's per acre.
Correct. Yeah. It goes both ways. So this one's originally negotiated by Terra Navigator, who Amoresco did acquire, and that's how they negotiated it. It was per megawatt.
Mr. Curry?
Could be a simple and very stupid question, but the life of the project is longer than 20 years, but the lease is only 20 years. So how does that work at the end of that lease? What happens?
We actually have it as a 20-year lease with extension options in there, because we would like to continue to go forward to 30 years, 35 years. So that's in there as a term that we can extend for 5-year periods, 5-year chunks beyond that. So yeah, typically we look at 30 to 35 years now with technology. So just the initial term, we wanted it to match the contract that we're getting from the utility.
And obviously we can't look in the future, but what does the negotiation at 20 years look like? Are we looking at cutting depreciation and raising tax on it to continue that lease? What is it?
What are those?
The terms are in there. I believe it's anything, every few years, the lease escalates. I think it's maybe, is it for the first 5 or first 10? It's set, and then at 10 years plus, it goes up a little bit, and then it goes 20 years plus, it goes up more. So that's already in there. And then as far as property tax, again, that's all by that state program. So, and it can escalate. They have what's called a trending factor that changes every year. And so, we have to make an assumption of what that's going to escalate, but we're responsible for that ultimately.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another savings to the county would be the ability to subscribe to, I forget the language, is it community garden?
It's a community solar garden, yeah. So the electricity that is generated is all subscribed to by subscribers. So in the state of Illinois, we are required to have 50% of that electricity to small subscribers, and then what they call as an anchor can go up to 40%. And so we've looked at Boone County's energy use for their facilities and estimate about 30% of the electricity from the garden could go to Boone County for a reduced price from what they currently pay.
Mr. Walper?
Yeah, I guess to Mr. Mueller's point, you probably could convert this to a per acre amount. I guess what I'm reading through is it's 3,000 per megawatt on 6.5, so it's roughly $19,500 a year is what we're expecting on income.
It's 3.5 megawatts total between the two. So
sorry, I thought you said 2 and 4.5.
No,
2 and 1.5.
The other thing too, just sort of clarification, there's only one lease in front of you so that it doesn't reflect the annual payments from the other lease, because we were negotiating one to make sure we had the terms correct. There's slight difference between the two, but what you see in front of you is just for the 2 megawatt. So there's going to be more fees than what you see there.
Right.
Because there's going to be 2 separate contracts.
So assuming this is going on I don't know how you would divide it off, the 6 acres or, yeah. I don't know how much of that acreage is that going to take for the 2 megawatts? I guess that'd be the question.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what the parcel sizes are, but typically a megawatt takes about 4 acres. There you have it up there. So what is it? We can't use the full size of the landfill because of the slopes and some of the terrain issues. And on the west side, there's, vents that we have to work around. So you'll see that on the other lease, but
20 acres.
You're looking to back calculate what would be per acre?
Really roughly $800 an acre. So, what solar farms are going for today, it just seems like it's not appropriate, but I guess it's whatever we agreed to years ago, the terms. It's a little short.
So brownfields, so landfills, they're more expensive, right, to construct. So there's a lot more cost because we can't just go through and put piles in the ground, right? So we have these big concrete blocks. That's an extra expense that holds the racking system. So everything's run above ground. So it is more expensive than your traditional ground mount system. And so, Illinois Power Agency has taken that into account to some of their programs as well, to try to encourage more brownfield development in the state.
Mr. Thornberry?
If every solar program came in here with a program like this, I would okay every one of them. This beats taking farmland away every day. And we have another land site right out here, a landfill site right out here that could also be used. Fortunately, the county doesn't own that one.
We are working with the city of Belvedere on that Superfund site as well. It's a little more complex because it is a Superfund site, but yeah, that's kind of our goal in the state is to focus on brownfields.
Good for you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9.10. Motion to approve ordinance 23-18, amending Boone County Code, chapter 55, construction of utility facilities, roadways, section 55-4, F, permit required, applications and fees.
So.
Motion by Mr. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Schneider. Becky, do you have anything?
I was going to let Justin.
Essentially, this is just striking a sentence out of our code, the code that was just referenced earlier. When we went through the franchise agreement recently here with Comcast, the last month or so, I did ask them, I said, hey, is this common, or do you always have a waiver on your permit fees? So the permit fee is $500. That's the dollar amount we're talking about. Or not to exceed, it's right there in front of you, I suppose, but it's typically $500. 2% of the estimated construction costs, whichever is higher. So I did ask the utility, one of the franchise agreement utilities, Comcast, and they said that it was some waive it, some do not. So and I asked, and then I did ask, I said, would that impact anything? And they said, we would follow your ordinance is what the response was. So I don't think that this will change any of the operations. It will help us recoup some of the cost. I've probably got at least 24 of these in my hopper right now that I'm not keeping up with. So if you see those pedestals going throughout the rural areas in the county, that's what's happening is all this utility. And that's one of my points my concerns is that we're getting a lot of this infrastructure in the county and I just trying to protect our assets. And one of the things that will help us stay on top of things is recouping our costs for reviewing the permits and then also following up with construction in the field. So this is basically just removing the waiver so they will have to pay the fee just like everyone else that does. And like I said, they didn't voice any objections to that.
Okay, Mr. Riley?
Excellent work, Justin. I know when you first saw that franchise agreement, you had concerns with it, and this was exactly why we need people like you running the stuff. So appreciate you taking care of that and bringing this to our attention. Excellent.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say, Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, just, I don't know if I'm missing it. So at the very bottom on part F, where you wouldn't charge somebody the application fee if it was under $1,000, what if the project starts and it goes past that? Would you like charge them in post or?
So the application fee is it's a permit review fee. So as soon as they submit their permit, that fee is to recoup our cost for the permit review. So we've had actually some applicants. Well, we had one this year, and that's still kind of an ongoing thing. But we had one applicant where they put in a permit, they never set foot out in the ground and did any work. He was still charged it.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve section 21-00114-00-FP Poplar Grove Road TARP project bid to low bidder road companies in the amount of $1,387,027.67.
So moved. Second.
Seconded, or motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Wilson. Discussion, Mr. Johnson.
So let the board know, I'm going to abstain from 9.11, 9.12, and 9.13. Rock Road is a company that does business, another one of their divisions does business with my company in Wisconsin, so I'm just going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Please note, Mr. and 9.11, 9.12, 9.13. Any other discussion? Mr. Crone?
I'll just give you a brief overview that it basically from Lawrenceville all the way up to just south of Whiting, where we have the city of Belvedere up to the village of Poplar Grove. That full section of Poplar Grove Road will get reconstructed. We do have a 630, I thought it was 640, but I put on there $630,000 TARP grant to pay for that. So that's roughly half, a little under half of the project cost. What we're doing is we're basically all the pavement there is getting recycled. New oils will get injected into it. We're grabbing the shoulder stone, so we're actually going to widen the pavement a little bit. This is kind of the poor man's pavement widening operation. So we're going to be widening the pavement, and our intent is to have if you recall a while back, we applied for some grants to use some bicycle funding to get bicycle lanes in there to get a wider pavement. That didn't go through, but so this is kind of the next best option. We've got larger farm implements, all that kind of thing that's going on. Safety shoulder is the way of the future with our distracted driving that's happening. It gives the people an opportunity to recover before they end up in the ditch. So we're widening the pavement so that currently we have about a 12-foot wide pavement lane. In the future, we'll have 15-foot wide. So we'll have an additional 3-foot. It's just slightly under 3-foot shoulder. So.
Any discussion? Mr. Mueller?
When they do Garden Prairie Road on north of 20, could we get that extra 3 feet?
I'll look into that.
It'd be really nice. We use that road quite frequently, and it's.
And that's a valid point actually across our board. So if you recall, we in the last couple of years we've gone from road postings in the spring. We no longer post our roads, and like I said, we no longer have to focus on the structure of our roads. Now we have to focus on the width of our roads and addressing those side slopes for safety. It's a tough one, side slopes for safety. So we are. This is kind of one of the first steps. Poplar Grove Road is one of our major corridors. We did that to a certain extent down in June. We'll be looking at all of our roads throughout our system to try to, now that we have our structure, our depth, now we need to get our width.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve section 21-05150-00 FP Irene Road Turf Project bid to low bidder Rock Road Companies in the amount of $518,032.83.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wiltsey, seconded by Mr. Mueller. Would you like to discuss?
So this is a real similar project, doing almost the identical same thing. We're not getting quite the width that we are. I think this one is 14 foot going from 12 to 14. So we're getting 2 additional feet on the shoulder, but same process. Basically, this is going from Ploty Quarry all the way up to Route 20. So it's about a 2-mile stretch of road.
Okay. Any discussion, questions? Mr. Wahlberg?
Were you, you spent quite a bit of time in discussion with Florida Township down there. Any updates on it?
Yeah, so if you recall at that time, the estimate for the project was like $750,000. We were talking about a $500,000 local match requirement. Through kind of creative design work, we changed that. We reduced the scope of this project. IDOT approved it. So now we're looking at $272,000. We have a commitment from Florida Township right now for 130 of that. So, they're still looking for our participation. And that's something that we'll have to, I guess, work out down the road and see where we're at with that. But so they're basically about half of what of the match.
Mr. Loxton?
Did you have to compromise the structural integrity at all to make it, I mean, is it still as roadworthy even with the changes that you made?
That's a good question. It is less I took away a lot of safety factors. I kind of trimmed out as much as I could. So it is still roadworthy. It'll still be acceptable road per our standards. And, it just, wherever there was any kind of safety factors or anything where I could trim, it was trimmed and it was brought down to the kind of the bare bones. So.
Go ahead, Mr. Lux.
Last thing, I had it and I lost it. Yeah, wasn't important. Never mind.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve Section 21-03122-00 FP. Centerville Road, bid to low bidder, Rock Road Companies in the amount of $412,046.26.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Curry, seconded by Mr. Wiltie.
So this is basically from Illinois Route 173, just on the west side of Cape Rin, going out Centerville Road to Stimes Road. There's a grain elevator there that is deemed a truck generator, so that's how we got the grant. So basically from there, which we actually paved the rest of Centerville Road last year. So this would continue that operation, but more of a thicker cross section, so it's going to have heavier structure. So for the truck traffic, so pretty basic project. We're currently working on the storm sewer in-house storm sewer improvements, but I do for this one as well.
Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve reimbursement highway fund from ARPA funds for the purchase of motor grader, $336,614, tandem truck, $246,593, and pavement attachment, $29,990.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wiltie, seconded by Mr. Curry. Mr. Cron?
So all the last 2 months, I've been talking about this a little bit to a certain extent. This is just the formal process to bring it forward to you for a vote. We did receive our CAT 140 motor grader back in May, and then we received our truck in June. So we did receive these pieces of equipment. They're all budgetarily approved either in 23 or 22. And so we're just asking for the ARPA funds to go towards those large capital equipment purchases.
Okay. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve the IGA with Region 1 Planning Council, R1, for Safe Streets for All SS4A grant.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wiltie, seconded by Mr. Schneider. Got this one too, Mr. Crowe?
Sure, I do, yes. So this one, the Boone County went to R1PC back in November, I believe it was, actually, I guess it was July of 22. And they did put in a grant application. This grant project SS4A had MPO written all over it. So they put in a grant application, they were chosen. The participants are Boone County, Winnebago County, and City of Rockford. I believe there may be one or two more municipalities, but in any case, it's a $500,000 project. I'm not really much of a, I probably should admit it, but I'm not much of a planner. I'm more of a boots on the ground and getting things done. This plan, the benefit of this plan is that this opens us up to future grants to apply for construction projects. So, this is one that is a requirement. And, there's a really big push. If you look at accident trends, we've talked about this a few different times with the sheriff and other folks. The accident trends are certainly not going the direction we want. They're not declining. They're actually increasing substantially since COVID. People have hit the road again after COVID. The accident rates per capita are increasing substantially. And so there's a lot of federal funds that are being pushed towards safety. And one of the requirements is to have the safety plan. So this is something that is highly encouraged. And if you look at a map of all the MPO areas that received the planning grant, it's pretty dark map. Everything, it's all, so it's something that we need to be a part of if we want to have future federal funds for safety improvements. So our match money is only $6,500 for the total project of $500,000. I do recommend supporting this, and it's kind of hard for me to say when it's not a actual construction project, but it is something that is going to it's going to be well worth it. So.
Mr. O'Reilly.
I just think this just goes to show, Justin, I think you'll agree that our continued, support and working with R1 just opens all kinds of doors for us. And I can't, I can't thank them enough for the support that they help provide us and helping us get this type of funding. And again, like you said, opens a lot of doors for us. So good work on that one.
We don't need the Boone County funding amount mentioned in this, no?
You probably should have the amount as well as where it's coming from, because I'm guessing it's not budgeted.
General fund, did I hear? No, I do have, I do have R1PC funds that would cover this in our highway fund. So that's, where where this would be coming from. So yes, that would be an appropriate move to say that this $6,500 match funds would come out of the highway fund, the 005 fund.
Do we need to have that in this motion, or can that just be added at county boards?
I can add it. I would add it now.
So you want an amendment to add it?
Do we need to actually have an amendment, or to have them raise their?
You don't need to amend it.
I guess was the motion just what was read here?
Yep.
You could just amend the motion to add what fund it's coming from. Let's make that motion to amend them.
I make a motion to amend the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wahlberg, seconded by Mr. Wiltie, to amend as dictated by the state's attorney.
So we'll vote on the amendment.
We're voting on the amendment. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The amendment carries. Now we're back to the original motion as amended. Any other discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. And I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Crone. And now on to, do we have any intergovernmental reports or updates? No?
Don't need an executive session tonight, correct? Okay.
No need for it, or Eric?
All right, I just want to make one final point. You guys, everybody, I've gotten 6 so far that have requested information and guidance on the ad hoc committee. So I'll be making some decisions on that in the very near future and reach out to those board members. And I appreciate everybody's input on that at this point. So thank you. Anybody else have anything? Now I'll entertain one more motion. Mr. Wilson.
Motion to adjourn.
To adjourn by Mr. Wiltsey, seconded by Mr. Mueller. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:16. Everybody.
Cleaning out my time.
went into promotion, they got all this crap in there, hugging up.